Have you ever noticed that certain kind of quiet, the one you only find at home? It's not the empty quiet of boredom. No, it's different. It's the quiet that feels like safety. It's that feeling. You hear the distant hum of the fridge, maybe the soft click of a clock, and you realize, just for a moment, nobody needs you to be anywhere else. That isn't loneliness, it's peace. But it's hard for some to understand, isn't it? They might look at someone who loves being home and assume they're antisocial, withdrawn, maybe even afraid of the world. But for some of us, home isn't about retreating from life. It's the one place we can finally truly breathe. Because out there, in the noise of constant comparison pressure and performance, it's so easy to lose ourselves. At home, we find who we are again. Maybe it started when we were younger. The classroom, the bus, the crowd, all those places filled with noise and chaos. For some, those spaces felt like survival tests. You had to speak louder to be heard, pretend more to be accepted, and smile wider to seem okay. So we built an inner world instead, a world that was softer, slower, more forgiving. That's where home became more than just a place. It became a sanctuary. There's an idea that people who truly love being home often feel the world a little more. A high sensitivity to all the external stimuli. It's like their brains process the world so intensely. Bright lights, loud sounds, too much conversation. It can feel like a flood. So the quiet of home, that's not avoidance, it's balance. It's the nervous system finally saying, here I can rest. But let's be honest, it's not just about overstimulation. There's something deeper, something almost spiritual about it. Home is the only place where we get to take off the mask. The social version of us, the one that smiles on command, the one that knows what to say, when to laugh, how to fit in. That version can finally dissolve when the door closes behind us, and what's left the raw, unfiltered version, the one that doesn't need to impress anyone, the one that just exists. It's strange how a person can be surrounded by people all day and still feel unseen. But the moment they're home, sitting by a window with a cup of tea, they finally feel visible to themselves. That's the quiet magic of solitude. It's not isolation. It's intimacy, but with your own soul. We often romanticize extroversion in our culture. We celebrate those who are constantly busy, constantly out there, doing, posting, performing. We treat silence like it's suspicious and stillness like it's laziness. But there's a quiet power in those who know how to be alone without feeling lonely, because they've learned that fulfillment isn't always found in noise. Sometimes it's found in the pauses. There's an old saying that goes, if you don't go within, you go without. For people who love staying home, going within isn't avoidance, it's alignment. It's how they process emotion, recover from overstimulation, and reconnect with what's real. Think about it. When you're constantly surrounded by people, your identity starts to fragment. You become a version of yourself for each audience. But when you're home, you're the only audience that matters. Of course, there's a fine line between healthy solitude and withdrawal. Even the most introverted souls need connection. But here's the paradox. People who love staying at home often have deeper relationships, not shallower ones, because they don't waste energy on superficial connections. They crave the kind of bond where silence feels comfortable, where you can sit for hours with someone and not need to fill the air with words. It's presence, not performance. When researchers study solitude, they find something fascinating. People who spend more intentional time alone often score higher on measures of creativity and emotional intelligence. It's not because they're smarter. It's because they're reflective. They process their feelings instead of drowning in them. They observe their own thoughts instead of running from them. In that stillness, ideas form, clarity emerges, and emotional wounds quietly begin to heal. Think about your biggest realizations. Did they come when you were at a party or lost in a noisy cafe? They came in the shower late at night, in your room, or during a quiet walk when no one else was around. That's the hidden power of staying in. It gives your mind the silence it needs to speak. But here's what's ironic. Many people who love staying home carry a secret guilt. They feel like they're missing out, like life is happening somewhere else, and they're failing to keep up. Social media makes it worse. Endless photos of parties, trips, and smiles make homebodies feel like they're something wrong. But the truth is, the highlight reel of other people's lives isn't the full story. Everyone's chasing peace, and for some people, peace just looks like staying in. There's something deeply human about needing a place to pause, to reset. In ancient times, monks would go to mountains or caves to meditate. Today, people do it in bedrooms, reading corners or tiny apartments filled with plants and music. It's the same impulse, the need to return to stillness after the chaos. The home is just the modern temple, and maybe the psychology behind it is something like this. When you're at home, you're in, let's call it a low-threat environment. Your body can just stop producing so much cortisol, that stress hormone, because suddenly there's no need to defend or perform. That's why your thoughts often feel clearer at home. That's why you might suddenly get emotional when you're alone. Your guard drops, and all the feelings you've been holding back finally rise to the surface. It's healing disguised as quiet, but not everyone understands this. Sometimes people will say things like, "You need to get out more," or "You're wasting your youth." What they don't realize is that staying home doesn't mean doing nothing. Some of the most meaningful growth happens there. Reading, reflecting, journaling, dreaming. These are all quiet revolutions happening behind closed doors. And the people who love staying home aren't necessarily avoiding the world. They're preparing for it. They're recharging, rebuilding, recentering. And when they do step out, they bring calm instead of chaos. There's also a deep psychological comfort in routine. The brain loves predictability because it reduces anxiety. When you know where everything is, when the space feels familiar, your mind relaxes. For someone who loves staying home, this predictability becomes sacred. It's not monotony, it's emotional safety. Every object, every small ritual, from lighting a candle to making the same morning coffee, becomes a way of telling the nervous system, you're safe here. Yet in a world obsessed with productivity, that kind of stillness can feel rebellious. We're taught that to be valuable, we must always be visible, always doing, always achieving. But people who love staying home quietly challenge that idea. They prove that meaning doesn't always come from motion. Sometimes it comes from stillness, from being rooted long enough to notice the rain tapping against the window, from having the time to actually think about who you're becoming. And maybe that's why homebodies often have such a rich inner world. When you spend enough time in solitude, your imagination starts to bloom. You begin to see connections that others miss. You notice the poetry in ordinary things, the way sunlight hits a wall, the way dust dances in the air, the sound of distant laughter through thin walls. There's beauty there, quiet but undeniable. It's a slower kind of happiness, one that doesn't need to be captured or shared to be real. Some people will never understand that kind of contentment. To them, silence feels heavy, and solitude feels like punishment. But for those who love being home, silence isn't emptiness. It's music. It's the sound of finally being enough. There's a beautiful paradox hidden inside this. People who love staying home are often labeled as distant or detached, but the truth is they feel life too deeply. Every conversation, every noise, every glance, it all leaves a mark. And when the world gets too loud, their instinct isn't to escape it, but to protect their own peace. It's not a fear of others. It's a deep care for themselves. You can tell a lot about a person by the way they treat their space. Some people's homes are full of light and music plants stretching toward the window, the air warm and calm. Others prefer dim lighting, soft blankets, the faint smell of coffee or candles. Each home becomes a mirror of the person inside it, a physical manifestation of their emotional landscape. The quiet ones build warmth, the dreamers build comfort, the thinkers build order, and within those walls, they create worlds no one else ever sees. When we study the link between solitude and creativity, we find something profound. People who spend more time alone often report higher levels of originality, empathy, and personal insight, because solitude gives them the freedom to listen to their inner voice, unfiltered, uninterrupted, unjudged. When you're surrounded by people all the time, your thoughts adapt. You start thinking in public language, shaped by how others might react. But when you're alone, your thoughts unfold in their native form. And that's where real creativity begins. Think of all the great writers, thinkers, and inventors. Many of them loved solitude, not because they disliked company, but because they needed space to think, to dream, to wrestle with their own ideas. Virginia Woolf famously said, "A woman must have money and a room of her own if she is to write fiction." But that truth applies to all of us, doesn't it? We all need a room of our own, metaphorically, or literally, just to understand who we are. People who love staying at home have learned that the outside world doesn't define them. They don't need the noise to feel alive. They don't need constant validation to know their worth. Because when you spend enough time with yourself, you stop chasing the applause of others. You start building a peace that no one can take away. Still, solitude can be confronting. When the distractions fade, the difficult thoughts can grow louder. And sometimes that's uncomfortable. That's why not everyone can stay at home for long. The silence starts to reflect what they've been running from. But those who embrace that silence learn something powerful, that peace isn't the absence of chaos. It's the acceptance of it. They learn to sit with their own emotions, to watch them come and go without running. That's emotional maturity in its purest form. And this is a beautiful truth, isn't it? That comfort with our own solitude might be one of the strongest signs of self-awareness. People who can genuinely enjoy their own company tend to have a more stable sense of identity. They're less swayed by peer pressure, less dependent on external approval, and more guided by an internal compass. Because when you spend enough time in silence, you can finally hear the difference between your own voice and everyone else's. That's how wisdom grows, in quiet places. Of course, it's not that people who love staying home never get lonely. They do. But their loneliness has depth. It's not the ache of emptiness. It's the longing for a connection that feels real, not rushed. They'd rather be alone than be surrounded by people who make them feel more alone. That's not arrogance, that's discernment. And when they do find the right people, they love deeply, quietly, completely, because they know the value of their energy. They give their attention carefully, their affection intentionally, and their trust slowly. And that's why their relationships so often last, because they're built on depth, not noise. But there's another side to this one that's less talked about. Sometimes people fall in love with staying home, not because they're peaceful, but because they're tired. Tired of being misunderstood. Tired of the world demanding versions of them that don't feel true. For them, home is the one place where they don't have to perform. It's not escapism, it's recovery. Some call this emotional decompression. It's what happens when you've spent too long pretending. When you come home and feel that sudden overwhelming need to lie down to do nothing, that's your body finally exhaling. You've been holding your breath all day, managing impressions, regulating emotions, suppressing reactions. And the moment you walk through that door, everything you've been holding drops to the floor. That's not laziness, that's survival. People who love staying home often live with a heightened sense of empathy. They absorb other people's moods, like sponges. They notice the small shifts in tone, in body language, the small changes in energy that most people miss. It's a gift, but it's also exhausting. So they retreat to restore themselves. And that retreat allows them to return to the world calmer, kinder, and more present. The more you study this, the more you realize that staying home isn't just a preference. It's a personality rhythm. Some people are wired for external stimulation. They thrive on movement, interaction, and even chaos. Others are wired for introspection. They thrive on pattern, rhythm, and peace. Neither is better. They're simply different ways of being human. But because society praises constant motion, the quieter types often feel like something's wrong with them. In truth, they're not broken. They're just tuned to a different frequency. And there's beauty in that, because the world needs both. The ones who chase the horizon and the ones who find the universe in a single room. The explorers and the observers. The ones who make the noise and the ones who listen for the meaning inside it. And often it's the quiet ones who help the world make sense of itself. They're the ones who translate chaos into understanding noise, into narrative and distraction into art. And maybe that's why so many philosophers, writers, and artists feel most alive when they're alone. It's not that they're escaping the world. It's that they're trying to feel it more deeply. They turn solitude into art, stillness into clarity, and quiet into creation. Their homes become extensions of their minds, a physical canvas for their thoughts. Every small detail carries intention. Every corner holds a memory. But even for those who aren't artists, the psychology remains the same. Home is the space where we process the world. It's where we sort through the feelings we couldn't express outside. It's where we return to ourselves after being too many versions for too many people. And that return, that homecoming, is one of the deepest psychological needs we have. Because no matter how far we roam, the truth is everyone needs a safe place to land. A place where they can drop the armor and just be. For some, that place exists in the company of other people. For others, it exists in silence, four walls, and a warm light. There's something sacred about those who choose stillness over spectacle. It takes courage to say no, to step back from the world's need to be seen, and to find value in invisibility. Because in that invisibility, something extraordinary happens. Authenticity returns. You start to live not to impress, but to express. You start to see life not as a competition, but as a conversation. And suddenly the walls that once felt confining begin to feel like wings. That's the secret psychology of people who love staying home. They're not escaping life. They're embracing it differently. They're noticing it, feeling it, honoring it at a slower, deeper pace. They're not running away from the world. They're creating a version of it that feels true again, a version where the heart finally gets to rest. And when they do step outside, when they finally do decide to go out, they bring with them something rare, a calm energy. They don't add to the noise. They carry stillness like a gift. There's a bravery in that, a bravery in doing nothing. Because once you've found peace in solitude, you stop searching for it in chaos. You stop demanding that others make you feel at home. You carry home inside you. So if you're someone who loves staying at home, don't apologize for it. Don't let the world convince you that peace is unproductive or that comfort is complacency. You're not missing out. You're tuning in. You're doing the inner work most people are too busy to notice. And that work, quiet as it is what shapes everything else. Because when the world feels uncertain, when people are searching for meaning, it's often the quiet ones who've already found it. Not in crowds or noise, but in the gentle, ordinary rhythm of home. The warmth of morning light, the softness of evening, the sound of your own heartbeat in the stillness. That finally feels like enough. And that's the beauty of it. The home isn't just a building. It's a reflection of peace earned, not given. A sanctuary built out of patience, presence, and authenticity. It's where you meet yourself again and again, until one day you realize you were never really running away. You were just coming home. Sometimes people assume that staying home means you've given up on life, but often it means you've finally stopped running from yourself. There's a strange peace that comes when you no longer feel the pressure to chase every invitation, every trend, every weekend plan that promises fun but delivers exhaustion. You begin to realize that joy doesn't always need witnesses, that sometimes the best moments happen in complete silence. The sound of rain hitting the window, the smell of something baking in the oven, the way the light moves across your floor at 4 p.m. You start noticing the details you used to be too rushed to miss, the way your heartbeat calms when the world outside is distant, the small, quiet satisfaction of doing something at your own pace. The way your mind opens up when it's not constantly fighting for space in the noise of others. It's not isolation. It's a reunion with your own mind. And yet, even in that peace, there's an undercurrent of guilt. Because we live in a world that glorifies being busy, where being seen feels synonymous with being alive. If you're not posting, if you're not out, if you're not participating in the collective noise, people assume you're fading away. But maybe fading from their eyes is how you come back into focus for yourself. Maybe quiet living isn't about disappearing, but about finally existing without performance. At home, you learn that solitude isn't the absence of connection. It's the quiet presence of self that makes real connection possible. You begin to see that not every friendship needs daily contact. Not every dream needs an audience. And not every day needs to be productive to be meaningful. There's beauty in the invisible life. In moments that no one claps for, in progress that only you can feel. And maybe that's the real secret. People who love staying home are not running from life. They're walking toward it intentionally without the noise. They're rediscovering what it means to simply be, not to impress, not to achieve, but to feel. Because sometimes the bravest thing you can do is nothing. Just sit quietly in your own company and realize that at last you are enough.